under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have a set of minutes to approve. So
We approve the minutes for August 25th, 2021.
okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. So move to approve by Rowan Cecil, second by Robert Perry.
You have just
Comment.
one correction.
Okay.
Mayor Drew's name is misspelled under staff members attending.
Oh dear, I didn't even see that.
It's a Jean, J-H-O-N. Bless you.
Oh. Okay. And it says that Rowan Cecil was excused and he did come partway through the meeting. I'm not sure how we need to show that on there. But it shows that he was voting on several issues, but it says that he's excused, so.
It does show in the top where it shows member attendance. It shows Rowan present and then he's excused from the festival. He wasn't there, so I think that it's double whammy. It looks. If you see that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I'm not opposed to it. I just don't want to be out of order.
That's good. We now have a section in here for public comment. Citizens may express their views on issues within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction. The Commission accepts comments in person, by mail, and by text. By law, email comments are considered public record and will be shared with all parties involved, including the Planning Commission and the applicant. So, do we have anyone that wants to speak this evening on something other than the issues that we're going to be covering, because you'll have an opportunity during that time? Scarlett, do we have anything email or text?
Not that I can find.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting. We don't have any public hearings tonight, and we come to the first item. The Planning Commission will consider and may take a recommendation to the City Council, a request by Paul Gibbons representing Shoreline Estates 2021 LLC for an exception to the Providence City Code 11-1-3, which limits a cul-de-sac to the maximum length of 600 feet. The applicant is requesting an 819-foot cul-de-sac on the Shoreline Estates Phase 2 and 3 development. We tabled this last week because we had a couple of questions. So Scarlett, I will have you come up and bring us up to speed. And who's here to speak to that tonight?
We have
Paul can speak for himself. He's a pretty good speaker.
sounds like Paul will do it for us.
Okay.
Okay. As you know from our last meeting, what we're looking at is a recommendation to City Council to grant an exception to the city code that requires that, or that limits the length of a cul-de-sac. And one of the things that you tasked me with was to talk with Rob Stapley, our Public Works Director, about snow removal. And I asked him if he would shoot an email, but between his schedule and I had to have some personal time out last week for a funeral and stuff, and we didn't get the email between the two of us that I can find. But I did chat with him. I did talk to him. He said that with the way our streets are designed, that would not change. The extra length would not make a difference in the actual cul-de-sac snow. The extra length, of course, makes a difference just because the plow's got to go that much farther, but not in the actual cul-de-sac snow. So there would be no additional snow removal worries than the normal 600 cul-de-sac would have on that. And then I think the other thing was, and I got Kathleen the contact information that I had for the neighboring property owner, and
I made contact with him.
so anyway, that's really what everything is the same, except for I did verify that the snow won't be a problem. It'll be just like a regular cul-de-sac.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before I sit down? Okay. I can stand back up again.
I did make contact with Nick Watterson and asked him, our question was, could we make that a through road? And last time, as we talked about it, Paul indicated that talking with them, they didn't want to have that come through. But when I talked to Nick, he said he was not opposed to that. He was going to call Justin.
Yeah, I'm Nick.
Oh, hi, Nick. And you're Justin. Wow, we have all the parties here. Do you want to come up and speak? Both of you or either of you, or speak to us? And maybe things haven't changed and they're the same as we heard last time, but we felt like it was worth exploring.
Yeah, I can kind of clarify a little bit. So I'm Nick Watterson. Nice to meet you all. I'm here to help represent Scott Watterson, who's the adjacent property owner. And in terms of his estate, we would prefer if one of those roads was a through street. We spoke a little bit with them about that, and there is a way for that to happen. And so that would be what we would be interested in, is if that the top cul-de-sac would become a through street that would dead end right there at that head of our property. I don't know if that clarifies it or makes it more distorted, but
Maybe it's more problematic. I don't know, but that was the question that we had.
Yep.
Because of course, as a city, we want things to connect and go through.
So is that clear?
yeah, so the parcel that we have is some of it's in Logan, some of it's in Providence, some of it's in River Heights. So it's it kind of depends what city would pick it up. We don't have, in terms of the immediate future, we don't have any desire to develop as of yet. But I'm sure, as you guys know, that can be a subject to change. But we don't intend to do that in the near future at all. But it's more advantageous for us to have more roads coming into the property than not. And so that would connect with Sarah Street at the bottom, Gibbons Parkway to the north from Logan, and then potentially now this upper road. You can see, yeah, that the one on the far east, right where that cursor is. And we've discussed the potential for some fill to be placed on our property, and that's okay.
It's all right.
Yeah, that's our position.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're talking about paragraph in PCC 11-1-3. There's two pictures there. We're talking about the one on the left as far as removal of the cul-de-sac idea and through the street. Is that correct?
If I can-
Come on up, Justin.
Sure. So I acknowledge Justin Palmer, sorry. I acknowledge certainly the benefit that through street provides for Watterson. Certainly
opens the door for future development should that occur. But it is, if you can see what you see on the left, that the hammerhead turnaround is on their property. They don't want that, and I understand that. So that would have to be pulled back onto ours, which does severely impact that lot, those couple lots in there. So that herein lies our concern. I'm not so sure. We're not here to discuss the through streets. We're just here to talk about the extension we're asking for a cul-de-sac. So that, yeah, there's advantages, value for Waterson that goes through, provides more access to their property. It does be valued 2 lots on ours. Hence and does provide or does create obviously additional grading issues.
So the issue is that the hammerhead would have to pull back onto your property.
Correct.
And so you're not willing to have that hammerhead on your side,
Yeah.
even though it gives you connectivity.
Yeah, so the ask from Scott, property owner, he would want it to be all flush. We're okay if Phil came over onto our side, but he wouldn't want a road to jut out from his property line. In that sense, and it gives us some access for.
Yeah.
It gives us some access for people who we allow to use their cattle on our property. If they have an end street there, they're able to drop off their cattle in our property, whereas if we don't, the only access point would be Sarah Street. Without,
The real benefit, I think we've talked about, maybe we haven't aligned necessarily in this regard, but the give would be, we have a cul-de-sac we want, we have to put a through street. It provides benefit for them to have that kind of access if they would allow for that hammerhead to be on there. I know that might be a tall order for Scott to accept, but it feels like a decent give and take. That works somehow. But for it to come back, like we mentioned, we talked about several times, if it does come back on our property, it does create less than desirable.
Well, it was worth asking. Okay. So we explored the questions that we had this last time. Does the commission have any other questions?
I had a question. Brian, what was approved? I mean, from their preliminary plans and for that, was the cul-de-sac originally approved? Was the road ending up there?
I think it had a cul-de-sac that was not as far, so they're
Right.
extending to utilize the additional land. But we always are interested in connectivity. As we discussed last one, and I understand lifetime. We talked about time frame, but it would affect them until the other road was picked up and moved. So it does affect that hammerhead until such time that another development occurs.
So the other thing then is the original approval was for the cul-de-sac and it was back. What's the distance that we're asking? 600 to
It was for the hammerhead.
the hammerhead, 219 feet. So what does that do if it goes back to what was originally approved? What does that do to the lots there? So it's either, I guess what I'm trying to say is they don't want the hammerhead on their property. So we either pull the hammerhead back onto yours, or you go with a cul-de-sac, but it's down to the 600-foot maximum.
You understand why we're asking for the genesis and why we're asking for the cul-de-sac to be
You
elongated.
can give your name, please.
Yeah, Paul Gibbons. Sorry, I thought it'd be
It's okay.
darker.
Well, it's from what I would say is to be able to have those lots up there.
There was a dispute between the Watersons and Stan Checketts as to the municipal boundary line of between Logan and Providence, in between the land.
Okay.
And Checketts and Waterson settled that dispute amicably, as I understand it. And they agreed to the north boundary line as shown on this right plat, which previous to that, knowing that there was a dispute, we had submitted the preliminary for preliminary approval.
Right.
As per requested by the city. We had submitted that essential plan with shorter cul-de-sacs. When that boundary line agreement was reached, it allowed us to then add about 8 lots.
So by that agreement is
Yeah.
where you gain the additional property, basically,
Correct.
which opened the door for the lots.
So that's all we're doing. We didn't have a problem on the lower 2 cul-de-sacs because they're not outside the parameters, but the upper cul-de-sac was longer than is allowed by the code. And so
Right.
really all we're doing is asking for this exception. If we were to go back, again, I can just reiterate, we submitted that for preliminary approval and received preliminary approval. And we did that knowing that this north boundary line could be adjusted, and in fact it was.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
And it is more of a procedural question than a substantive question on this. Having sat on the Board of Appeals, this seems more like a variance from the ordinance that should be going to the Board of Appeals rather than the Planning Commission making a recommendation to the City Council. And you can call it an exception. And it seems to be a variance. And I'm just curious if Scarlett, if you could sort of give me some background on what's going on here. And let me just make my statement clear. I'm always one that looks to substance, not form.
So,
And having been on the Board of Variance, this issue came before the board when I was on the board. And the purpose of that 600 feet was fire hydrants and cross streets and keeping traffic flow. And so, if we're creating a record, which the ordinance currently requires, I don't see much of a record in the recommendation other than the recitation of the ordinance. That's 2 questions, by the way, but in fairness to them.
yeah. And I was listening the whole time to your 2 questions while I'm pulling up the state code. In our city code, we do have in Title 10, which is our zoning ordinances, we do tell people in Title 10 that they would be looking for a variance if they want something adjusted in the city code, in the zoning code. In Title 11, which is the subdivision regulations, and they are still land use regulations, no argument there. But in Title 11, which is the subdivision regulations, the council created a exception, and that's what we're looking at, is the exception in this. And I don't know that I'm prepared to state one way or the other whether that's contradicts state code or not. I can tell you that we had legal counsel review it at the time that we put it in, and they actually helped write some of the provisions. And so, so that it wasn't just something that staff put together or that the city council put together. We did have legal counsel weigh in on it. And I think that the paragraph is in your packet out of Providence City's code that talks about the council may grant an exception. But we do have to have findings. it does say, and it does say that they are acting as a land use authority in granting an exception. And I thought it said they had to have findings. When approving a request for an exception to this title, the city council shall specifically identify conditions that exist that support a determination that complete compliance with the requirement of this code is unnecessary to serve the public interest and the goals and objectives of the code and the general plan. So when you make if you choose to make a motion to recommend going forward that they allow it, you do need to identify the existing conditions as to why you're recommending, why you feel like that would need to go forward. Now, in state code, under appeals and variances, that's in Utah Code 109A in the 700 section, and variances are 702. And it says, any person or entity desiring a waiver or modification of the requirements of a land use ordinance as applied to a parcel of property that he owns, leases, or in which he holds some other beneficial interest may apply to the applicable appeal authority for a variance for the terms of the ordinance. And if we're looking at this under the term of a variance,
The conditions are pretty strict, and you have to meet 5 conditions that you're now going to say, which is my concern.
yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
have to meet all of these conditions. Literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause an unreasonable hardship. And remember that term unreasonable hardship, because we're going to talk about it again in a second. For the
It's
applicant,
not just economic hardship. Yeah.
yeah, it says for the applicant that it's not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use ordinance. There are special circumstances attached to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in the same zone. And keep in mind that the person asking for a variance has to meet every single one of these. It's not 3 out of 5, it's all of them. Granting a variance is essential to the enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property in the same zone. The variance will not substantially affect the general plan and will not be contrary to the public interest. And the spirit of the land use ordinance is observed and substantial justice done. So those are the 5 main objectives that an applicant has to make an argument as to why they meet all 5 of those. Now we're
For a variance.
for a variance. And we're going to talk for a minute about the unreasonable hardship. In determining whether or not enforcement of the land use ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship under subsection 2A, the appeal authority may not find unreasonable hardship unless the alleged hardship is located on or associated with the property for which the variance is sought, which it definitely is, but the B is the one that really causes a lot of struggle. Comes from circumstances peculiar to the property, not from conditions that are general to the neighborhood. The next part of that says, in determining whether or not enforcement of the land use ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship under subsection 2A, the appeal authority may not find an unreasonable hardship if the hardship is self-imposed or economic. And so those are the criteria that they have to meet under the variance. Also, when it talks about special circumstances, the appeal authority may find that special circumstances exist only if the special circumstances relate to the hardship complained of and deprive the property of privileges granted to other properties in the same zone. So variances are extremely, as at least one of the members of our commission found out, they are extremely hard to get, and for good reason. They feel like when cities put ordinances together, they should be the rule. And if you're going to move away from that rule, then there better be some really, really good reasons to not follow that rule. That's what it is with a variance. And Joe, I can't answer to your question as to why subdivision ordinances aren't, or why the subdivision regulations in our city code don't refer to the variance, but they do have that exception clause in there. So that's all I can go by is what's in our code.
Let me just say this. I'm not a voting member of the planning commission because there are 5 other members here and I'm an alternate. So but if I were voting on this, I would not approve it. And it's nothing against Mr. Gibbons or his property. I just have a problem if the city council is having an ordinance that requires 600 feet. And why are we accepting it out without some very good reason? And I haven't seen the findings for that other than the land dispute between 2 people differed and did it. But I'll be quiet and let you guys who are voting proceed forward.
So this is Scarlett,
Yes.
this is there are 2 appropriate ways for this to happen. What we're looking at with Paul Gibbons Park property, is that correct? One is a variance and one is approval here. Exception.
An exception to the title 11.
So that's what we're talking about today. Last time was an exception to Title 11.
If they were coming in and asking you to consider allowing them to have different setbacks, let's say that instead of extending the cul-de-sac, they wanted to have a reduction in setbacks so that they could make that little T thing still fit all their property and everything. We would definitely be sending them to the appeal authority for a variance because that setbacks are governed by Title 10, which is zoning. But Joe's point, the whole subdivision and zoning regulations are land use ordinances is a valid point. Like I said, I don't know why that's the way the code is. Because the exception was actually there for a long, long time. We reworded it and moved where it was placed in chapter 11, or excuse me, Title 11, probably 6 years ago or something like that, I'm thinking. But we had an exception. We had an exception to title for a very long time. And I don't know if there was a time in the state code that you could do that and we just carried it over. But like I said, we did have legal counsel work on the ordinance and approve it. So, I mean, the council approved it, but legal counsel was involved in the ordinance. So
So what
that's
you're
when we
saying
come
is
in.
this is an appropriate place for this to come.
The way our ordinance is written, it's appropriate. I'm not going to speak to whether somebody could argue that an appeal would be better. I'm not prepared to speak to actually Joe's question. That's kind of above my pay grade at this point. If I had
You didn't
some
go to law
homework,
school, right?
no, if I did some homework and sat down with our city attorneys and stuff, then I could speak better about our
But
position.
my point, just in fairness to everybody, land use law is a very complex subject. I've been doing it for 41 years and I learn something new every day about it. So I'm not saying it just is odd to me that you go ahead and call it an exception when it's got it wags like a variance, it has 4 legs like a variance, and it's barking like a variance.
And it meets all 5 criteria for a variance.
Well, it doesn't meet on any of the criteria for a variance. That's the problem. And yet the city council has passed an ordinance, and they're the ones that pass these ordinances. I'm not disputing that. That's their authority. But then they allow themselves to have an exception. And it's just an odd thing. But again, I learn something new every day. I don't know why you would have the ordinance that requires 600 feet that applies to everybody, and they've determined that's in the need of the public interest of Providence. And then we're going to grant an exception without at least considering those same elements of a variance in your findings for recommending it to the city council. I think those same 5 conditions are factors that need to be taken into consideration.
It's gonna be a slam dunk.
Well, for you that are voting on it, it may be.
You know what? It's not, Joe, thank you. I think you did a good job there. I really like the outcome.
The fact that there is, initially, we approved the shorter cul-de-sac, didn't we? No, we did not.
Yes, you did. I can show you what you approved. I thought I could.
Okay, but since the approval of the shorter cul-de-sac, there's an agreement between a couple of property owners which has changed the boundary. And
But it allowed more lots, 8 more lots, right?
yes,
That boundary change, it allowed 8 more lots.
that's right. And possibly because of that agreement, this would be something that would fit giving an exception. The fact that the agreement that
This is the preliminary plat that was approved prior to the adjustment. And I'll turn my laptop around so that the public can see it as well. But as you can see, this cul-de-sac up here is significantly shorter. I think there's, and Steve or Paul, you might want to correct me, I think there was 12 lots on the shorter cul-de-sac, and now we've got 16 on this one. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Okay, so we've got, I'm trying to see the harm that may come from extending this, well, doing away with the cul-de-sac. That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Right.
So
It's either do away with the cul-de-sac or
an
allow.
exception, allow an exception.
Right.
Well, so we could finish this tonight by allowing, or by no cul-de-sac and putting a T in, or a hammerhead in.
For emergency vehicles to turn around.
Right.
Well, and the thing is that because of something unique to the property, the agreement being made of the boundary line adjustment created additional land there. So now you have to look at, there's advantages to that, disadvantages to that. So the cul-de-sac, what was approved, won't allow it to service the additional property. So that's where the city has come and asked for the hammerhead. Is that right?
The city has not asked for it. The applicant has asked. I mean, the city's requires, if they have a straight through street, then they require a turnaround, but we don't require that it be on the neighbor's property.
Yeah.
We just require that there's some kind of a temporary turnaround for that street to extend.
And so from the city's position, we approved the cul-de-sac, but there was only this much, so many lots at that time.
Well, it was only so long.
It's only so long. So we either make an exception to service the lots, or the other option is to put the road through and have the hammerhead. And because the neighbor's not willing to have the hammerhead on their property, it would have to be pulled down into where the additional land was picked up. And Joe, you're saying, if I understand right, that this is something that our code kind of has, it could be handled 2 ways. Is that right? That it could go to as a variance, or it could go.
It allows.
What I'm saying is the city council, in their wisdom, they're the elected officials, put in the subdivision ordinance this term exception which to me is all it is a variance. And they want findings. And my concern is, when I was on the Board of Appeals and we granted variance, we were very careful because it set a precedence for other property owners. And I think you're doing the same thing here, that if you want an 800-foot, where the city ordinance is, it's done on an ad hoc basis, which to me is not how government operates. Government ought to operate on a uniform set of rules, and the exceptions should be based on uniqueness.
So do we have an acceptable reason or logic from city council as to why? I mean, there was the one question about, could it handle snow? I gotta believe there's more reasons than that not to have a over 600-foot cul-de-sac. I mean, if we had a crystal ball, if we knew what the reason was, do we have the right to step over it? And if it's just a matter of snow removal and Public Works says it's not a problem with snow removal, then can we go ahead and do the exception?
My understanding, Charlotte knows better than I do, but I was told when I was on the Board of Appeals that the 600-foot was to get cross streets and traffic to make the traffic more movable here in the city. And I live up on Vaughn's Way, and quite frankly, when the mountain got on fire in Logan several years ago, if it would have spread over to Providence, getting those people off the hill, there was only one way to come out of there, and it was all on Center Street. It still is. Well, I guess unless you go up around.
Oh, you can go around now, right?
Yeah, up and around the stands. But am I wrong on the cross streets? Or if I am, tell me. I'm not trying to, I'll admit I'm wrong several times.
No, actually, there was a time when we did not have a limit on the length of cul-de-sac. We did have a limit on a through street, that a through street could not extend, I can't remember, I think it was like 980 feet or something like that, without a legitimate intersection. So it couldn't have had two cul-de-sacs going off of it. It had to have an access out of that street, and that was a through street. There were a couple of places in the city that did not make sense for, and as the council thought about it, they felt like they could change that to 2 blocks. So now it's 1,320 feet. But the cul-de-sac, we didn't have a limit on it either. And if you go up to Eagle View and you drive down that cul-de-sac, I don't even want to say, but it's well beyond 600 feet, that cul-de-sac. And we realized that, and what we kind of thought we were doing was relying on the fire code to help us out, so that we didn't get, the whole point is, if there's an emergency, we don't want to have any more people trapped in an area than we have to. And so we realized that the way the fire code read, it wouldn't help us limit cul-de-sacs unless there were more than 30 homes on it, and then we could maybe get some help on it. But so we, at that point in time, we looked at it and we felt like a block-long cul-de-sac was probably an adequate distance to provide a safe access for people to still have their privacy in their cul-de-sac, and yet still be able to have not a whole, a large amount of people get trapped in that. That was our reasoning, in all honesty, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. That was the thought behind it, was to limit the single access for multiple things. One of the things that we will have to look at it when the time comes in our multifamily areas is how we handle some of that, because the fire code does limit the number of units on a single access. So we will have to look at some of that, but which would trump our cul-de-sac link if they had to have more accesses. But anyway, that's where it came from, Joe. You're right. It was for safety. It was from lessons learned from the fires and from the length of the Eagle View cul-de-sac and things like that.
I don't mean to beat this to death, but why doesn't the city council just change the ordinance to say 900 feet and then Paul doesn't have a problem, but it is 600 feet now. And
But it does allow for an exception.
it does.
And so it allows for an exception, and we found out that there really is no reason from Public Works that that's a problem. So we have to follow the code, right? And if we say to Paul, you have to put a hammerhead in there, the net effect is he's got a cul-de-sac until a road from the other side that Waterson's might put in who knows when, that would meet that. But so we've still got the same problem, right?
Is it a cul-de-sac? When, if there's a hammerhead at the end,
Of course, the net effect is the same.
short term, long term, it's another access out.
How short term?
Exactly.
Nick, can you tell us when you're going to build up there?
I can't speak to that, but it provides a lot of, the property itself is one of the last major properties that's still in the green belt. So it does provide us a lot of fire access if that area does catch on fire, which we know that if it does, it goes fast. We have very little access in terms of where the fire department would actually be able to come onto the property. There's only Gibbons and now Sarah Street would be the only two access points. This would provide another place. If you look up there, some of the fire poles are still burnt from the last fire we had. And that provides overhead power for a lot of people. So that would be another reason why we would want a through street there, because it would allow access for safety vehicles and fire department to be able to come on.
Sounds to me like you're giving us a reason why you should have the hammerhead on your property.
Potentially, I know Scott, he wants to have a unified property line. But so we've worked now with 3 different developers in regards to this. The property dispute was, every time I've worked with them, it was always knowing that the eastern property would be going with Stan, and it switched hands, and now it's with Paul now. So the length of it has always been what it was, but the hammerhead, the turnaround was everything that I saw. It was in the preliminary class until I saw it was in your hands, then it was not. So you can see where we're coming from. We always saw that it was being put in, it was developed, and it was going property. Then it was, when it was submitted to you guys, then it had the cul-de-sac, which then kind of alienates us from access into that part of property and future development.
So you're saying that some of the stuff that you saw during the dispute or whatever showed the hammerhead being on the side being developed?
Where it wasn't so much of the thing. It was sometimes it was right, sometimes it wasn't, but it was there. It wasn't ever a cul-de-sac.
Well, but
Does that make sense?
it does.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's a lot of benefit coming to you. If we go with the cul-de-sac solution for them, which the city council created the exception to allow for something like that, you get no benefit.
Yeah.
You're not going to have access that way. You're not going to have, for in case there's a fire, for better access up there or additional access. You're not going to have an easier source for unloading cattle or accessing cattle from there. It seems, and ultimately it sounds like you would hope at some point some road would come through and be connected, benefiting from that. But I don't understand. I hear you tell us about a lot of benefit to you, but I don't understand why you're not willing to put it there, have it there.
But on
If in the long
property,
term, if on your property, yeah.
that's something again, we can evaluate. the last I spoke with Scott about this was probably 2 months ago in regards to the actual hammerhead itself. And we can evaluate it at this point. I don't know that he would have a firm no. I know he would rather have a through street or a dead end street rather than a cul-de-sac. So if that meant that he would have to justify giving some property for that, then he may be willing to want to make that exception, but.
Yeah, but a hammerhead can be destroyed and made into a street. I mean,
Right.
the hammerhead is not simply a
Temporary.
temporary thing just for fire safety.
Understood. And so, yeah, it's, for us, it's, we would hope that it could be within the property that's being developed. If it must, we would think the possibility would be on ours.
Well, it's a big issue now. This developer wants to get going, wants to know what he has to do so he can get that stuff done. I see a lot of benefit coming to your property by that being there, and for a period of time. Yes, you have something on there, but it's a lot of benefit to you right now. And then at some point, if it gets developed, if it doesn't, it's still a big benefit to you. Even if your property never gets developed, stays greenbelt, all of that, for the things that you look to do and have been doing, it could be a real benefit for you.
We call
Sure.
it.
Chair,
I called him already.
Yes.
Madam Chair, two things. One, if you can have an audience member, would like to have them at a mic so we can record that better. And second is when we talk about development, there is all kinds of benefits. So each one of your homes had a sewer line that came part of the way to your house before you got there, before your house was built. All of that benefit came, and there's oftentimes benefit. The development happens because it develops from property line to property line generally, and we don't look to every future benefit or future person that may benefit from that sewer line or water line that goes in. We look at the development and we look and say, is this development developed in a manner that is consistent with our general plan, that fits the ordinances, and if there is an exception that has an overwhelming reason for that. Obviously, we are looking for development. When they presented last time, it was presented that the adjacent property owner was unwilling. Sounds like that's different. But at this point, you look at development. If we have water line, where does that go? And they go through streets. You have a sewer line, where does that go? Goes through streets. Fiber, which the city has committed to. All of our utilities go through streets. We don't go utility to utility through a cul-de-sac. So whether it's safety, whether it's usability of property, we've talked about property going through as far as for emergency response, but public utilities that are put in are also go through streets. So we look at through streets. I think we have somebody in the audience from First South, and we made a big deal, and the council made a big deal of a through street. We've talked a lot about through streets being important to our community. I don't know why. I guess I side with Joe. I don't know why this is much of a discussion. It's a through. I mean, we're asking through street. It's longer, but at that point, there's a lot of reason for a through street in the end, and not just snow or one. Well, you can pick one and you can argue one all you'd like.
Thank you for your comment, Ryan. I like the idea of being through because people that live along that street eventually will be a two access, double access for them instead of just one way.
I think the developer should have to work out where the hammerhead is, and if they can work with their neighbor, I think that's great. And I think that they can talk about all the benefits together. I think that's great.
have to advocate for myself, I guess.
Maybe.
Give us your name.
Paul Gibbons. I don't know where the sewage or the water would end on a through street, if that's a municipal boundary. Maybe you could enlighten us, Ryan, but I believe it would end at the municipal boundary.
Well, you know, at the south of this the very south on the bench, we have a property line with a adjacent city. And at this point, they're in a lawsuit to push it in towards the city. So at this point, yes, municipal boundary is current, but again, that is currently this, but when it develops, it may be something different. I don't plan for that as far as if it's not in the city, but at some point we have 80 acres that are looking to come in on the south side of the city, and their water and sewer are all looking to come straight into the city. Topography wise,
Has to be done by agreement or by laws. So there are municipal boundaries.
well, not
sewage
necessarily.
and water end up going.
I'm not saying that it has to be done. A boundary line adjustment. We've just finished a boundary line adjustment with Millville in a different area. It was amicable and everything worked out just
But I
fine.
think here we've got a boundary line between Logan City and Providence.
Right.
In order for there to be connective, as the argument you were making is sewer and water would connect through.
I'm saying utilities. I'm saying utilities connect on through.
Sewer and water specifically.
I did, but I said utilities because I had quoted fiber and other utilities. But utilities connect on through streets oftentimes. It's true.
Well, you know where I stand. I think it's probably pretty plain. I appreciate the fact that you considered it. I do have to say I appreciate the fact that you're looking out for the Watersons on this one, and I hope that you'll consider that. I believe this makes a lot better looking subdivision for Providence City. Thank you.
Just for the record, we're not looking out for anyone except Providence and the city of Providence and what's best for the citizens. Well, I asked him to come because there was some ambivalence about whether it was actually going to be, if that could be a through street.
So are we talking, is that the boundary lines, the municipal boundary lines on the north end of this property?
That's current boundary line.
If I may, I've always had a concern. Nick Watterson, thank you. I gotta remember that. Thank you. I'll do better next time.
Speak at the microphone and give us your name.
Yep. Good at it. You're good at reminding us. So yeah, we've always had a concern from the beginning, whether we're here as a helping with the development or even just a property owner or just someone who's in Providence City. We've always had a concern of having that be a through street. It solves a lot of problems, it sounds like. So if it's a through street, the 600-foot variance or exception, you can just disregard it because now it's a through street. It's something that we would like as a property owner. The only reason I would see why it wouldn't is if the person who's buying that top corner lot, if they just didn't want to turn around in kind of their front yard, then I think that would be why they would want it. But if we do make the exception to put the hammerhead on the property, then I don't think that neighbor would be that upset because it's not into their front yard. Either way, that's why I've brought this concern forward. That's why I'm here. I'm here as a member of Providence City. I'm here as helping with Scott and his estate planning. So to answer that question from Paul, that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Question or comment.
Okay.
So I'm not voting, but I was really influenced by what Joe said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what the commission votes tonight is a recommendation to the
That's
city
correct.
council. And so if I were voting, I would feel most comfortable saying, we're going to follow our codes, which say no cul-de-sacs over 600 feet, and let the city council they have overridden the planning commission before and ignored planning commission guidance, and let them make that decision and stick to what our code says. I think that may be, you can call that a punt, but there's let them come up with the reasons to accept this versus setting a precedent where we say, wow, this looks good. Because I think it would look good as a cul-de-sac. I think that it would look great. I think it would be great as a third street. But if we're sticking to, or if we're being wary of setting precedent, as Joe indicated, maybe it's best to stick to what the code says. And then because the council can make an exception, let them have that prerogative.
I'm going to have to recuse myself. Paul Gibbons is a very dear friend of mine, and I'll continue in the debate, but that makes Joe a voting.
I don't know that it does. If you recuse yourself, you're still here, so I still don't get a vote.
I know,
But I appreciate
but I don't. If I recuse myself and I don't vote, and you just vote for every vote.
We know that you're recusing yourself.
Okay, then I want to recuse myself on this one. I'm going to stay in the discussion. This is more contentious. No, it's not contentious. This is more.
Well, it's a hard issue.
It's
a
harder
very
than
tough
I thought. I thought it was a slam dunk too. Yeah. Pretty close to being done on this.
I apologize. I didn't mean to.
Joe, it's just you. Don't worry. It's not personal.
Well, it's difficult because we're trying to make the right decision for Providence. And I think that for all of us up here, we're concerned. That's the reason we serve, is because we want to make the right decision.
Would you like a motion?
I would love a motion.
I move that the planning commission not make the recommendation to the city council to approve Paul Gibbons' request for the shoreline estates, for the exception to the city code 11-1-3 to allow cul-de-sac in excess of 600 feet.
I think you need to wordsmith that just a little bit,
Be my guest.
because you made the motion not to make a recommendation, and you really don't have that option. You need to make a recommendation one way or the other. You can either recommend you deny, or you can recommend that you approve. If you're not going to recommend, then the council does what they want without your recommendation. But if you really feel that you should deny it and stick with the ordinance, then you need to make a recommendation to deny. I just wanted to make sure that you knew what you were voting on. Right now, you're voting on that you're not going to make a recommendation to council.
Thank you, Scarlett.
So you don't want to change how you stated that?
Scarlett did it for me.
No, I just clarified what your
All
motion
right.
was.
We're making a motion to deny.
I moved that we deny
Recommend
That
it.
we
Right.
recommend.
that I move that we recommend we deny the request by Paul Gibbons to have a cul-de-sac extension greater than 600 feet.
We have a motion on the table by Rowan Cecil. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion. I think what's proper for the best entrance of Providence City is that we stick to our code. And if the city council wants to make an exception, I think as Tyler stated, that's where it should come from. So I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Michael Fortune. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So this will go to the city council next week. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move ahead. We have a Spring Creek preliminary plan. Planning Commission will consider and may take action on preliminary plans for the Spring Creek Townhomes, a mixed-use development containing 82 townhome units and a commercial building located in the general area of 265 Gateway Drive. We tabled it at the last meeting because we did not have anyone here. Do we have anyone here today? Okay, good. Scarlett, we'll have Scarlett bring us up to speed and then you'll have a chance to make your comments.
This is a mixed-use development. It is located, in the general area of 265 North Gateway Drive. And because it won't have access onto 100 North, the way it's drawn, that's where we're leaving it, is 265 North Gateway Drive. What you're looking at is the preliminary plans. As you can see, the Providence City is an enacted ordinances for land use regulations. Our general plan shows this area as a city core with 5-minute to 10-minute mixed use nodes. And you can see that in the illustration that was included in the next to the paragraph in the staff report. A city core is a business district style of commercial and office uses serving multiple surrounding neighborhoods. The city core is an area for mixed use and higher density attached housing. Mixed use nodes are small collection of retail and service uses focused on a corner or single block serving immediate surrounding neighborhood. So that comes right out of our general plan. The mixed use district, the plan appears to meet the minimum requirements for a zone as far as density. It's actually less dense than what it could be. This one is 2.15 units per acre, and actually in mixed use, we can have up to, I believe it's 24. I'd have to look at our new ordinance change. So there are a couple of things that we do need to have corrected on the plat so that it meets the standards. We require that this, and I know there are some surveyors that don't like to do it, but we require that the surveyor actually stamp an initial or sign the preliminary plats. And we want to make sure at the preliminary plat stage that we are dealing with the right boundary lines. So we do ask for that. And I realize that some people have told us that we are asking for that earlier than other communities. We may well be, but we there's a reason for our wanting that. We just want to make sure that before we move to final plat, because the preliminary plat is where now in these cases it's going to be a little different, because you're going to see a lot of preliminary plans come along, or a lot of final plans that are actually more intense when it comes to landscape and things like that. But as the layout itself and the legal description itself, a preliminary plat, we want to make sure we know we're dealing with the right piece of property. And that the
Scarlett, can I just ask a question? You're calling it a plat. On here it says plan.
at the preliminary plans or plat, either way we go, we want to make sure
Is
that
it
it's
an anonymous term? Okay.
It depends how they end up doing it. If they keep it all, then it's a site plan. If they, and then they don't need that, they don't, unless they're changing the boundaries of the lot lines within it and doing amended plat, then they need to have it surveyed and signed, stamped. But if they're going to split any parcel off, like if they're going to split the retail building off, then it would fall under subdivision rules. And so they would have to have the survey and have it signed.
My only question is about the difference between the word plan and plat.
So the plan is, if it's a site plan, then they don't need to have a plat. If it's a subdivision, then they need to have it as a preliminary plat. And when we talked, they hadn't totally decided. So I reviewed it with the more restrictive of making sure that they met all the preliminary plat, if they chose to put the plat in to the subdivision process, and that they also met all the requirements for a preliminary plan as far as commercial and residential, or commercial and multifamily site plans go.
Thank you. It's just a point of a word.
Clarification. Good point. And then it says the plan appears to meet the minimum requirements of the zone as far as density. The plan appears to meet the minimum requirements for a preliminary plat with the notice and conditions listed below. And this notice is different. It's because it's mixed use, and we're just at a point where we're going from one ordinance to a new ordinance, and this one is under the original ordinance. So, but in order to make things work, I put a notice in here. They're not exactly conditions, but I did want the developer to know that there was things that are important. This review is not all inclusive. The Planning Commission and other staff members may have other comments. The site plan, architectural plans, and landscaping plans are preliminary. Changes and/or additional information may be required to meet the final plan requirements. The infrastructure shown as preliminary, actual locations, sizes, grades, etc., will be addressed as part of the construction drawings review. And then conditions, they need to address some of the comments in red. If they are proceeding forward with subdivision, they would need to address the surveyor stamp and certificate. And they would also need to address the water dedication or the water requirement. And I don't believe that I received those. I kept looking through my emails, and I don't think I ever did get the water requirements.
So the water requirements being payment in lieu of or surrendering shares
or conveying a water right if they have to have one. And then you, as the Planning Commission, are quite involved in this. So if you have comments in addition to what I put in, or Aaron, or if Max is there on here, I don't remember, I'll look through it. You certainly they have to address your comments that you may add to this. And then again, the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and province city rules, laws, codes, ordinances. Approval by the city of any submitted application or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. And then the next illustration just shows where the proposed property is. And then you will see the way they've got this written up. They're calling it a preliminary plat. We'll have to determine whether that commercial lot is going to be lot line. If they're going to sell these as townhomes, because they've now changed it to townhomes, then it may be that each one of those units have its own parcel number. So, but that will be for the developer to declare, but he's got to do that pretty quickly so that we can know which way to proceed with the final. And then you can see the fire that's added in here. It shows how the fire can access the emergency vehicles, particularly the fire department. They've got their preliminary landscaping plan included. They saved a blank sheet for it in their actual submission packet. So it's out and the numbers are different. Instead of saying sheet 3 of 5, it's just L100, but sheet 3 of 5 said landscaping plan to be insert landscaping plan. So that's what I did. And then we've got the elevations. And I apologize, I did not realize that I put this one in upside down when it scanned in. But you've got the elevations, all sides. And then you've got the layout for the retail building, the elevations for the retail buildings, and that's it.
You don't see any problems, I'm assuming you don't see any problems with the ingress and egress to the property?
You know, honestly, I would have preferred that they incorporated the property to the south as part of their development on the south side of the creek. But as far as the access that they are showing, they are meeting the fire code. So they're within the realm.
Thank you.
They're meeting the minimums. So, and in some of them, they're meeting them way more, but in that they're meeting the minimums.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, you're on.
Good evening, Adam Paul with Peralta Development, the developer. Thank you for seeing us tonight and hearing this. I think that the issues that were brought up primarily were we need to decide if we're platting this as individual condominiums and as a separate parcel for the commercial building. We decided to do that. So they will be platted as individual townhome units that could be sold, but we do not intend to sell them. We intend to keep them all as a ownership group and rent them out. But I think it's easier now to plat them than it may be to go back and do it later if that's a decision that needs to be made later. So we'll get right on that, and hopefully that the surveyor is willing to sign what he needs to sign to
So
make
they'll
the
actually
requirements.
own a piece of ground under.
So
their-
yeah, so
if you decide to sell them.
if we decide to sell them, the condominium plat is actually airspace. It's between the walls. It's no ground. It's kind of interesting how that works. The homeowners association would own all the land in association, but individual owners own their
Piece,
airspace.
Yeah.
It's kind of a interesting,
selling air.
legal.
Expensive air.
Very
Expensive
expensive, very expensive air.
We'll sell you the air, but give you the condo.
You can use this air in here, but nowhere else. But we do not intend to sell them at this point. Like I said, we intend to own them all as an owner. So I think that was issue number one. Issue number two that Scarlett brought up is, let's see.
Water requirements.
Water requirements, and I apologize, I didn't know that we were needing to get you that, so I'll get to the civil engineer on that right away, and we can do the water calculations and determine what's needed. And then any others, let's see, I think those were the issues I wrote down that you brought up. Did I miss anything? Okay. And I first want to apologize for not being in a meeting that sounds like I was maybe supposed to be. I didn't even
But
know.
we just
So
need to pass
I
things
really
or
apologize.
deny things
Yeah.
when people aren't here.
Well, there's probably some people happy in line behind me that I wasn't here, but I apologize for not being. I didn't know I was supposed to be. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I do have a couple of questions. In the initial plan that we didn't sign off on anything,
Right.
but you said, this is what I'm planning to do here.
Right.
There were like some barbecue areas, there were some children's play areas. I don't see those in the plan. What happened to those?
Still the plan to include what we call an amenity package that would have all those same things. We're just getting, as we discussed with the landscape architect, and that this is still a preliminary plan. He didn't want to draw them yet, but they still need to be drawn. And so that would be part of the next submittal.
Okay,
As we can progress. My understanding that there was to be 3 visits, if you will, with the
The planning
planning commission as we progress along through these plans so that we don't get too far down the road, missing something. So you have a chance to see everything and comment. And if that's something you'd like to see on the next one, we'll have it on the next one.
That would be great.
Great.
I just looked at it and said,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I thought they were going to be on here.
We've got them
Yeah.
on another, so it's just the landscaper wasn't ready to draw them. And so they're on this plan, meaning to really get into the technical aspects of it.
You just heard a discussion about connectivity,
which
is important to us as a city. And as we look at this, there's connectivity into the LeGrand Johnson property, which nobody knows what that's going to be, or even if you could.
Well, I can just give you what I know about that. We've talked with them and they do intend to do something with that property in the next several years. But again, they didn't commit. They didn't say where, what timing, just that they want to do something with it. And this isn't LeGrand. LeGrand's actually leasing the property. So we actually spoke to the owner of the property. And they
Who are the
said,
owners?
I don't have their names in front of me, but they, that's right. They said, for sure, you're more than welcome to put a future access on your site. We can't guarantee that it will line up to what we have planned, but we've tried to put one in a central area that works well when you look at their site and our site. We had one down lower before and it didn't work very well because of some more stream and potentially wetland areas. So we moved it up and we think it could very well be a connection point someday. We hope it is. We did try to get easements through neighboring properties to have this be more connected, and we were kind of shut down by our neighbors.
To the north?
I mean, no,
Is that to the north?
no, to the north, no harm, no foul. I mean, they didn't have any obligation to do that whatsoever. So then this became a fire issue, and we met with the fire marshal and his team several times to come up with solutions, and we're sprinklering the buildings, what they call it. So there's a sprinkler system in there so they feel that there's life safety is covered.
Then my other question is about connectivity, and it seems to me like a natural place to put it is to go into where the theaters are and to that road that's there. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, we looked at that extensively. We were worried that there's wetlands in that area that would require very expensive bridging that would literally not work, pencil for anybody to do anything. And then there was the other condition, if we tried to get foot traffic through there, we might have people, we might have some trespassing on the property. And so as of now, and it's not out of the question that we don't develop that at another time, or that the neighbors to our south buy it and use it for commercial. They may want to build a commercial building there someday that attaches to their project. Commercial's just been a little slow lately. Retail's been a little slow. So it's just a future option to develop.
So it's not out of the question.
It's not out of the question. And there is beautiful, what I think is a very nice stream running through there and some kind of greenery. And so we hope that our residents will walk along it and enjoy it, and that it will be a feature to the project. But you're right, it won't connect to the commercial project to the south.
Okay.
For now.
Can you put a locked gate? I would think that would be.
To do
that would
what?
Provide, well, it would provide walkability to stores over across the street. And if it's a locked gate, then people would have a code, I'm assuming, to get in through there. But that way.
How would they
don't have to
cross
go
the
out.
stream?
I don't know. Does the stream go all the way?
Oh, yeah. It's a deep and banked stream and potentially wetlands there. That's why another reason why we're pushing our development up. We just don't want to get into the wetlands and disturb those. And the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, yeah, it would be a big project to work on.
Last time, I believe, was the dog park down in the corner.
Yeah, so we still intend to utilize that corner there for what we call a dog run.
Yeah.
Not a park per se, where someone can release their dog for a minute to do its business. We can show you that amenity package in the next, it'll be much more vetted, much more designed at that point. At this point, we just got areas circled for kids park, kids play, park, barbecue areas, things like that.
Anybody else have a question?
I just have one observation. I'm not intending to be negative in my, so I apologize. But I don't know what good a 24-foot road connecting into the Grants would ever serve to Providence City.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it's not a road wide enough for anybody to use other than in those developments. And I just make that observation. If there's public here, you know, thinks it's a great idea. I don't really see the advantage of it. I mean, if I'm wrong, Ryan, go ahead.
Well, no, I just maybe give a shot. You'll know that I am a fan of wider roads, and I appreciate going from the 20 to 24. That was, you know, because that puts 2 lanes. I would say 24 is a private area. Would we prefer 30? That's the city standard. But let's envision what that property could be. It would probably be commercial. It would probably be some type of facility that is like a Macy's or a movie theater or strip malls. So it would allow the residents another out. It is fire accessible at 24. Would I prefer 30? Absolutely. If that's what you're asking, I mean, you know, have a, but as a private drive, that's what's coming in, that's what goes out. At that point, it does connect as anything else. It would connect utilities potentially. I understand that's Logan today. We'll see what it is tomorrow. But if we're connecting fiber or water or looping lines into it, maybe we have a meter on that side or a meter on the other side. There might be more than just the travel ability, but I agree with you. 24 is still narrow, but I appreciate it's wider than the 20 originally. But I don't know. I wasn't trying to convince. I just give an alternate option.
I do have one other question, and that is we've just, we're in the middle of this Proposition 1, and one of the big issues is that residents are bringing up in some of the other areas is parking for guests. Now, they're going to have a 2-car garage under each unit, so that gives them 2 spaces. But if they have people that come to visit them, there's no room behind, like in front of their garage to park.
Parking
Maybe
is,
sideways.
No, yeah, parking is always a good question. We've got a lot of, or several guest parking spaces interspersed throughout the project, but the largest guest parking will be the commercial parking lot in the front. It's over parked for commercial use. And in the evening when people come to visit and workers tend to leave, that will be mostly an open parking lot in the evening hours, visitation hours. And that will have easy cross parking access. We'll sign that, you know, you can park here for guest parking. There'll be other opportunities, but people won't feel comfortable parking in front of people's garages or things like that.
Right.
But we do have a lot of parking on this site for when you take the evening guests away from the commercial use, it's then a lot of parking because of the 30 or so parking stalls for the commercial space.
Thank you.
Good question. Gateway Drive, some in the community think that it's getting very busy. We discovered the other night. To what level are you concerned in thinking about that one way going out. I'm just having visions of during busy times, your development getting backed up with people trying to turn left there, not being able to. The consideration to make it a right turn only out of there, or kind of what are your thoughts on what that's going to look like?
But frankly, we feel it's going to be. Someone mentioned, I think Scarlett mentioned that the density here, we could actually have the zone allows up to like 260 units, and 50,000 square feet of residential. So this is traffic will be like a small percentage of what that could be based on what we planned on. And we really don't feel like it's a big concern, frankly, to be traffic be backing up just because of the nature of this being a residential project. People kind of come and go during the day, mostly in the mornings and evenings, but not much during the day when commercial traffic's heavy. And so what we found is that these kind of uses work really well together when it comes to spreading out the traffic flows. So we're not concerned about that. And when we saw that the site was entitled for that high of density as well, we thought, well, we're going to impact everything to a much smaller scale than what it could be by down densifying it. That's
But you know what? It's not your density. It's what's coming down the road.
Yeah.
And we heard the other night, somebody said.
Okay, if it's not
15
our
minutes
density, then yeah.
To get out onto Gateway Drive. So
Wow.
I think the
That's-
nature of what we're.
Are they residents or are
about.
they business?
Well, they're just people going on Gateway Road, Gateway Drive, because they are going and coming from work. And so you've got one exit here until this takes place over here. That may be a considerable issue for the people who are coming here to take part in the commercial activities that you have, as well as your residents coming in and out. So it isn't you.
I see what you're saying.
It's
The street's busy.
It's the street that's really busy.
And it's really the left hand, or if you're turning the opposite way, that
Yeah, left hand in.
part. So if you were exiting your development and making
go
a
to
turn to
Logan.
the north,
Turn
towards
north,
Logan,
go left out. Yeah,
just
you
that
could
the
be
nature of
waiting
that,
a
I would
while.
encourage you to, and I don't mean to suppose that you haven't done this, but go out at 5 o'clock and look at it. Just with all the curves on that street, there's blind curves, and I don't know what it would be like exactly here, but it's a challenge for some people, and it's a kind of a sensitive area. And I personally wouldn't have a problem with it. You wouldn't have a problem with it because it's if the zone allows it. But I would say, for the sake, especially if you're doing it as rentals, maybe you're going to have visions of those bad Google reviews saying that it's impossible to get out here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was the retirement area that was complaining about not being able to get out and turn to go toward Logan. You can get out coming toward Providence, but they're going the other way. It's a problem.
Okay.
I would recommend that you make a right turn only sign there.
Can we do that?
Right.
I think you can.
I don't know that I would.
I'm not sure that's, but to Joe's point there, at that point, if you looked at at least for the first piece of that, if it is a right, left, and center, so that if it widens at the intersection, so that can be right hand, can be left hand, and entering into the property, because you're entering that might flow your traffic much better. And to add that just for that,
Great point.
adding on that right hand turn, you're just adding it. And at this point, it looks like you're adding it on our property, but
It probably is.
So-
That property that we're using together there was wide. Let's make it as wide and have as many lanes.
but at
as
that
possible.
point, it might need to have, and so at 20, at 24, again, see,
Expand to 36.
yeah, so you'd have to expand to probably 36 to that area. So I don't know where the other one is through and not into a major one. I can't see my crystal ball what that would be. I'd love it more, but
The traffic plan, where, when, do we have any idea when they're gonna put a light in there?
A light in,
Just north of this. I think it's Golf Course Road.
I don't know I think that a roundabout will fit there. I think that's what's coming is a roundabout there, and probably 10 years horizon is about a 10-year
Because right
horizon.
now, it's a problem. I can't that way coming here, and it's happened a lot. You wait. You finally get through if you want to turn right. If you want to turn left, it would be 15 minutes today during traffic hour. So I think that responsibility would be up to the city, is what I'm saying, is that if there was a light, or I'm not sure a traffic circle would do it, but if there was a light up on Golf Course Road and North Gateway, then the problem, then the city would mitigate the problem using traffic control. And
Except that's out of our purview.
it's, well, no, but we can get counsel from our city officials.
At this point, it's set for a roundabout at that spot to flow people in back to the highway. So that's kind of what the design is. A stoplight doesn't, I mean, a stoplight would back up traffic beyond it and would slow. I mean, it would potentially slow it.
Potentially make it worse. Their backs all.
Yeah, it could potentially make worse. I don't know that one. But when we get closer to that horizon, then we'd probably have its own study. And but at this point, we have a lot of honestly lower hanging fruit that we're working to try to get accomplished. And I apologize that this one's coming. It'll come, but
A lot of times during the day, there's hardly anybody on the road, but at peak times, it can be problematic to get out of there.
so
But a wider entrance so
wider
that
entrance,
not
wider
everybody's
entrance
backed up
helps.
with one person trying to turn left and
Right
everybody
or
else
left,
wants to go right.
because if your left turn backs up and you have right hand traffic wanting to go, then you back it up twice as far. And so,
Great point.
Anyway.
Let's get that as wide as we can there.
They'll be crashing.
hey Joe,
into the gate on the other
am I
side.
making progress? I know you don't. That's why I look at you.
We gotta keep it light.
You asked.
I do have one comment. Adam, you said you're thinking condominiums and airspace, and your plat says townhomes. If you're doing condominiums, then with your final plat, we need to see a draft of your declaration, and your plat will have to delineate what is limited common area and what is general common area. So if you are doing condominiums, there's going to be quite a bit.
Additional review.
Well, on the final plat, you're going to have to put a lot of information this review doesn't say that you
Right.
need to, but if you're going to do condominiums, you're going to have to put more information on that
Yes.
final plat.
And we, as a group, we've done a lot of condominium plats delineating between those things and putting together CC&Rs and things
Okay.
like that. So we can do that. And I think we've already started to deliver some of those, like a sample CC&Rs and HOA establishment docs. If not, we can get,
Okay.
we're ready to go on that plan.
I don't think Eli's got that to me, but
Okay.
maybe he has. I'll
But we
look
can,
back through
we can
again.
definitely, we're ready to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that this was not reviewed with that type of a development in mind. So,
So to me, and I might be wrong, but when I say condominium, a condominium can be a townhome or it can be a flat. It can be what they call stacked unit, one on top of another, or it can be side by side. So when we call these townhomes, we're just commenting that they're side by side. They're not on top of each other.
okay, I get that, but there is in state code, there's a specific code, as you probably do know, that we have to look at for condominiums.
Yep.
So even if you design these as townhomes, if you're going to sell them as condominiums, we have to live up to the requirements in
Well, even
that
if we're
code.
not going to sell them immediately,
Or-
we may plat
right.
them that way. So we have to go
Right.
as if we're going to sell them,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Right, and
Okay.
so then you would have to live up to that code. And my whole thing was, if you were to come back and say, well, we met your conditions, I guess I need to add a condition that if these are going to be condominiums, you're gonna have to add some stuff that wasn't listed on this staff report.
And to clarify condominiums, you're going to continue to own the ground.
We're gonna continue to own everything.
I realize
speaking
if you
to
sell,
condominium.
on a condominium, generally condominiums, you only own the space you have, but not the ground.
It's like paint to paint.
Right,
And not
right.
the ground. The homeowners association owns the
Okay,
ground.
I'm just making sure that that term has been correct. Okay,
And I'm not the
I
legal.
just wanted to make sure we were on the same
Source on
term. And
what-
that sounds
how
like
that
we
all
are when
works.
it sounds like we're on the same term with condominium. So
Anyone else have other questions?
That was on my short list.
Okay, so no more questions for this? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
no, no, I'm sorry. Adam, it's Adam.
It is, correct.
You can sit down now, because I think we're done asking you questions. I've got more questions.
I
We
guess
gotta
we're-
clarify it.
Thanks.
Okay? I don't think it has anything to do with Adam. We just have to clarify a point here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Glad you came tonight.
Okay, so this parcel in its entirety is one parcel. I'm assuming that, right? It's one parcel.
there
It's
were
been
two.
zoned as mixed use. We did that not long ago.
There are 3 parcels right there.
Actually, there are three parcels but it's one zone. So, this piece still has its own parcel number. This piece still has its own parcel number. So that's
Yep.
on the southwest side and on the southeast side. Those are individual parcel numbers. And then the big side, the big parcel number, that is going to be broken up into yet to be determined how many parcel numbers.
Okay, so my question then is, when they break them up, those 3 parcels there are zone mixed use. When we break those up, don't they fall out? They're not mixed use anymore.
No, the zone stays the same.
No, but the usage just changed.
We will have to look at that. If they were to sell off some of those, if they were to, let's say they decided they didn't want to keep the 2 parcels on the south of the creek.
Sure.
They may need to, because I don't know what their open space requirement would, I mean, we've figured everything that was all part of one development.
Right, but
And
what if they
so-
decided to sell the commercial property separate from the rest of the parcel? Divide it off,
They
sell
could,
it.
they could do that because it's still part of the development, but the terms of the sale would have to include the cross easements and everything that would allow it to continue to meet the zone. So they couldn't sell it off and then have the people purpose the building to be townhomes. If they sold that commercial space, it would have to stay commercial space in order for the zone to meet, in order for it to be compliant in that
Okay,
zone.
so right now, the commercial building has got a relationship to those condominiums. And I'm gonna call them condominiums since it's a plan. There's a relationship between the 2 of them. And what if you break that relationship? Somebody owns a commercial building, somebody and individuals own condominiums. Now, when we approve this as mixed use,
Well, it will still be subject to the terms and conditions of the overall development. So when they create their CCNRs and their declaration of covenants and all of the things that they have to create with their cross easements and everything, doesn't really matter who owns the property in that zone. It matters how the property is used in that zone. So if it's being plotted as the commercial designated commercial area to meet the mixed zone requirements, if you wanted to buy that, you would still have to utilize it as that designated commercial area. That you couldn't turn it into living quarters or something like that. So it doesn't matter who owns it. What matters is how it's used, and that will have to be part of all of their covenants and everything. Those kind of things will have to be included. The cross easements, the uses allowed, all of that kind of stuff has to be included in their agreement so that they don't violate the zone.
okay, so that'll come across in the CCNRs.
It should.
Okay, that's something that comes across city's desk.
It comes across the
Approved.
city's desk on condominiums. We just make sure that on plats that there'll be notes on the subdivision plats that talk about some of that. Because Providence City does not enforce the CCNRs or the declarations. That's up to the homeowners association or whoever they put in charge of it to do that. It's not the city. We just look at it to make sure if they show limited common space on a plat, that they've addressed that limited common space in the deck or the CCNRs. We make sure that what they're saying in words is what's illustrated on the plat. That's our involvement in the CCNR part of the thing.
So there's no teeth in this, in the CCNRs then, as far as keeping it mixed use.
Well, the teeth is in the zone. If somebody came in and wanted to change that building from commercial to something else, we would deny their request to change it
Based on
based on the zone requirements.
the original plat, based on the original plat?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
One other thing I wanted to remind everybody, this application came in before the change to the mixed use ordinance. So while we would encourage them to look at electric charging stations and bike maintenance stations and whatnot, this one, where in future ones, they'll be required, and this one, they're not required.
Thank you. Okay. I'll entertain a vote if there are no more questions, comments.
That the planning commission approved the preliminary plans of the Spring Creek Townhome, a mixed-use development containing 82 townhome units and a commercial building located in the general area of 2265 Gateway Drive.
Okay, we have a motion by Rowan Cecil. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Robert Perry. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Bentley Estates final plat, the planning commission will consider and may take action. Scarlett gets to speak first.
I just thought.
On a final plat for Bentley Estates, an 8-lot residential subdivision located in the general area 1040 south, 400 east. So, Scarlett?
Okay. You approved the preliminary plat for this. The concept plan was submitted on August 19th, 2021. It was approved approximately September 1st. You don't have to approve those, but that's when staff felt like it met all of the requirements and sent it on to preliminary. The preliminary plat was brought before you on September 22nd is when you approved the preliminary plat. This is a 8-lot residential subdivision in a single family traditional zone. Their proposed density is 2.27 units per net acre. They could have up to 3.75 in that zone. They have gone through and they have met all the code requirements for the final plat. They still will have to meet, but just because the plat itself has met everything, they still have some things they need to do. They'll need to complete and initial the required information in the application for development and public improvement installation. And I've got the draft ready to go on that, but I've got to get some input from both Rob and Max on the construction drawings. The construction drawings have to be signed in order before the final plat can be recorded so that they can move forward with that. They'll have to do some bonding, those type of things. But as far as the plat itself, the piece of paper that is called the final plat, it meets the code for that. They still, like I said, they'll still need to do some things with their construction drawings and their public infrastructure installation, but the plat itself has met the requirements for that, so. Questions, concerns? And they will be improving both 400 East and 470 East.
That improvement will be widening it, right?
Yes. Some asphalt on both of them and park strip, asphalt, curb, gutter, park strip and sidewalk.
I don't see the parcel. Am I missing something? The parcel's not showing up on the maps.
Is that 4-acre parcel? Up off of 4th East?
Two,
South of 10
115.
South?
2, 115 and 27.
Are you looking for a picture of where the?
I didn't include that in the, I didn't include the recorded plat page.
I was just looking
in the
at
packet.
core package from the county,
Oh,
and I don't see it in there, and so I was concerned. That's where one of the places I got it up on the parcel running. 2, 115 and 27. I'll try again.
make sure you're getting all the zeros. I tend to sometimes just do 2 instead of 0, 2.
Okay, any questions for Splendid?
No.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Now,
It's long 2 hours.
Oh, it just went by like
Until it
that.
gets to 4.
I won't be here.
State your name.
Andy Bittman.
Okay.
Oh, I just need a hurt so I can go home.
Okay.
Pretty much it.
We need to approve it so that we can
It's
go
like,
home.
yeah, exactly. It's identical to preliminary plat, other than there was some wording changes, I guess, the engineer wanted, so they made immediate changes and ready to roll. So, my very boring project. Could have been super.
Didn't start off.
We're sorry that we didn't get into Disneyland. We would have called it.
It was kind of a steep learning curve, but you know. Okay, any questions for Andy? Pretty much what we've seen before.
Can we give him kudos for trying so hard? My golly.
He just likes to come and visit with us, right?
It is fun. I do enjoy it.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion then if there are no questions.
I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat of Bentley Estates, parcel number 02-115-0027, located in the general area of 1070 South.
Oh, well, no, that's not the right one. You're talking about Ballard Springs. Just above that, Bentley Estate. Item number.
Area 1040 South, 400 East.
Yeah,
That's
But
it.
it's missing.
that's it.
But he was reading the plat numbers
No, he's reading.
Oh, he's reading it over
off
here.
of Ballard Springs.
Parcel.
Oh, no.
Parcel 02-115-0027.
My mistake.
Yeah.
You'll
Okay.
have to fire me.
Just give you,
We're gonna be mayor anyway. So
promotion.
just give you a tough.
I
just want to make sure we got it right. Sorry.
It's okay. Can we start over?
Yes, I think you should.
I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat for the Bentley Estates, parcel number 02-115-0027, and located at the general area of 1070 South, 400 East, to include the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the conditions.
I second the motion.
Okay, motion by Robert Perry, second by Roland Cecil. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We did it.
Yes, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good little bit.
That's true. Okay, item number 4. Rezone application of Ballard Springs. The planning commission will review a request to change the zone from 4 parcels 02-090-0013 and 03-002-0007 from commercial highway district to mixed use, located in the general area of 300 South to 500 South, State Road 165. We tabled it last meeting. So, Scarlett, we'll have some information from you, please.
Actually, I just realized that my staff report didn't get included in the packet. So I apologize.
Can Ryan pick it up somewhere off of the cloud?
I can hurry and probably email it to him.
If it goes that way, I can toss it up.
Well, Scarlett, thinking this stuff, there's a thought, once you take away commercial, you can't get it back.
That is true thought. Once you,
No, we did just discuss the possibility of turning a commercial building.
Yeah, we tried, they tried. I mean, it's not possible.
That was not their idea.
Not possible.
So we just asked if that was possible.
Yes, if it was possible, I would watch that property. And if it stays vacant for 3 years, then I would be interested in buying the property and pleading case in front of you guys. So let me turn it into rentals. There's plenty of parking.
Please don't.
What?
Please don't come in 3 years. Please don't.
But we,
4?
I have to say, Brian, we have told people that have come in, we have frustrated some building owners because they have wanted to lease to a tenant within a building, particularly in the commercial highway zone, and the tenant didn't put them over the 12% for incidental use, and we've turned them down. We've said, sorry, you can't do that. So we do try and stay on top of that type of thing. Okay, Ryan. You should get that. I apologize that I didn't realize that it wasn't in there. We did get a comment on this one in Providence City at gmail.com. And so I'll go through the staff report and then I can present that comment that came in specifically about this item. So the date of my staff report was September 21st, 2021. This is it being called Foothill Residential, or did I lose my mind?
Well, one time we made an offer in that name, but then
Okay,
we changed it.
so something did come in with that then on the application. I think probably lose my mind, but I certainly wouldn't have made that up. I think that's why maybe I goofed and didn't get the symbol to them like I should have. There's 2 parcels involved in this one, 02-090-0013, which is the owner is Foothill Residential LLC. And the other owner is 0200, or excuse me, the other parcel is 0200200007, and that's Kathy Furman. And then I've got the general area addresses. They're not assigned addresses. This general plan shows this is staying commercial highway. The commercial zone is commercial highway, and the requested zone is mixed use. If we look in the the conclusions, the city has divided the city into zoning districts. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing prior to making a recommendation on this request to assign a zone designation. So that will have to be scheduled. Tonight's meeting, you're not going to make a recommendation. This is just studying. The city's zoning districts include both the commercial highway district and the mixed district. The general plan, vision, and key initiatives are listed above in the findings of fact in this report. The property is currently zoned commercial highway, as you can see under illustration A on the report. The general plan map future rezoning of existing districts in the annex area. Anticipate these properties will remain commercial highway district. And you can see that in the illustration B. The transportation plan identifies this area of 300 South as a major collection road, and this area of 500 South as a minor arterial. It shows where those areas are located on the little map, and it also shows the key to the roads that are shown, and then it talks about the typical street cross sections, and this is all coming from our transportation plan. Figuring out 300 South in this area has also been identified as a limited access road. That means we want to control the access. Some of this stuff will be considered will come more into play as you look at the actual site plan or subdivision for the development. But I think before you change the zone, it's important to realize what is required of the roads and things surrounding it. It's also 300 South and this area of 500 South are also shown as a separated buffer bike lane. And then there's also an illustration of what a major collector looks like with the bike lanes and what a minor arterial, which would be the 500 South, would look like with the bike lanes. The Parks, Trails, Recreation Master Plan, the trails section in the master plan proposes a roadside path for this area of 300 South and this area of 500 South. And then the sensitive areas, in our code, non-developable sensitive areas are jurisdictional wetlands, steep slopes, where the rise or fall of the land is equal to or exceeds 30% over a horizontal distance of 50 feet or greater, measured perpendicular to the contour lines. That's important to keep in mind because sometimes a parcel will come up with a steep slope on it, but the slope is only 20, it's definitely 30% or greater, but it's only 20 feet in height. And so it doesn't meet our definition of steep slopes. Now you meet somebody else's, but not ours. And then potentially developable, and then also natural waterways or open water, including but not limited to rivers, creeks, or streams. The non-developable areas are important, and there are some included in this, and they will really come into play when they start to talk about density, because they can't use that acreage toward their density calculations. That has to be subtracted out first, and then what remains, they can use it for their density calculations when they look at the number of units they can get into this, along with their commercial.
Now, what about using it for their open space?
They can do that, but they can't use it towards their density. Steep slopes, the potentially developable, can be used in the density calculations, and that's steep slopes where the rise and fall is between 20 and 30% over a horizontal distance of 50 feet or greater, measured perpendicular to the contoured lines. Floodplains, and I'm not going to get into that definition, but floodplains critical wildlife habitat areas identified by the State Division of Wildlife Resources, geological hazard area, earthquake fault lines, or areas prone to debris flow, landslides, higher extreme liquefaction potential, and rock falls as identified by the U.S. Geological Survey. Wildfire wildfire hazard areas of the city designated as having moderate to extreme potential for wildfire. Again, on some of those, you will see them show up on the parcel zoning viewer if you look at the sensitive areas, but some of them aren't to the extent that meet our code for hazard or sensitive area. And then the lands within potentially developable sensitive areas may be developed and built upon, subject to the requirements of this section and other applicable city, state, and federal codes, and may be considered for development density. That's the potentially developable ones, at the discretion of the Planning Commission based on recommendations from professionals with expertise in the field being discussed. Oh, I misspelled. That's not in the filed, that's in the field being discussed. And then the Cache County GIS parcel summary lists areas that may require further analysis. On property 0209000013, there's canals, moderate slopes, steep slopes, liquefaction potential, and wildfire hazard areas. On 030020007, there's canals, wetlands, water bodies, FEMA floodplain, county floodplain buffer, moderate slopes, steep slopes, liquefaction potential, and again, hazard wildfire areas. This is coming off the parcel viewer. It doesn't mean that they will actually end up being hazard areas, but there is something there that says that we need to look at it a little further. A comparison of the uses and the area regulations listed in Providence City Code 1061 and Providence City Code 1081 are attached to this analysis. Prior to making this, so the conditions that we have going along with this, prior to making a recommendation to the City Council, the Planning Commission must hold a public hearing, and the applicant shall meet all applicable city, state, and federal laws, codes, rules. Approval by the city of any application submitted or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. And so then I put down what the attachments are, and I don't know why they didn't come through. Darn it. I'm gonna have to add something else. Because the comparison charts are important. You got the comparison charts?
Oh, I got, yes, that was the application. I was going back to see if any of it was in there. I was trying to help.
So I apologize.
Can I interrupt?
Yep.
Since we don't have the report and we just need to set up for the public hearing, when we do that, move it along and look at the report when we have additional time. I can't make the motion and I can't vote.
Then we table it for now.
No,
We
not
can move it
table
to
it.
a public hearing.
We have public hearing. We have someone here.
We do have
Speak
some.
about it.
So would you like to hear the comments that this person said, and then these
I
guys can-
apologize if I cut you off. I didn't
No,
mean to.
you're fine. But that's why I said some of this report will apply as much to the planning, more so to the public hearing and to the future development steps. But I wanted you to have all of the information up front so that you can make a good decision as to whether to change this zone from commercial highway to mixed use. This email,
Make the recommendation.
or yeah, sorry, recommendation. This email came from Jason Holmes. And he says, good afternoon. Over the past 2 to 3 years, Providence has seen an explosion in mid and high density housing. I've seen highly valuable commercial land get rezoned for more housing. My occupation is in real estate, both residential, commercial, and development. I'd love to see progress, especially here in Providence. Why is Providence pushing for so much residential growth? I understand the need for more housing, but equally needed are more restaurants, small businesses, the backbone of America, retail and recreation. I love selling homes, but it seems there's not much forethought for the future non-residential growth. This means tax dollars will be reaped by other cities, not Providence. I have questions about the action items. And I actually did send him the information that he wanted to know as far as where to find the ordinance on mixed use and the density. He says, I'm frustrated to see, as a longtime resident of Providence, I'm frustrated to see so many high density projects, especially with no benefit to local economy. We have almost no usable land left for the future commercial growth. I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting due to other commitments, and that he just thanked me in advance for the info. So anyway, that's his concerns, and they've been duly expressed to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, since we don't have the report, we can move this forward.
Do we have a representative?
We do. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah. Well, maybe more than one of us.
Come up here
Oh, sure.
and tell us who you are.
Well, my name is Justin Campbell, I'm the architect. Maybe I misunderstood. We are seeking a recommendation for the rezone. Is that correct? Or did you state that?
Right, that's, the planning commission is a recommending body.
Okay, because I thought,
They hold the public hearing, they make a recommendation,
okay,
and the city council is actually the legislative body that assigns the zone
sure,
change.
absolutely. I misunderstood. I thought you mentioned that we are not seeking that recommendation. We are only reviewing the application. I just wanted to clarify that.
Because we can't consider it until we have the public hearing. And so the next step is to get you to a public hearing.
Okay, all right, very good. So it is a mixed use. We looked at the zone requirements for the mixed use, and we've provided some potential diagrams of how that would lay out with the zone. And so the blocks they're represented on the screen currently are representing commercial and the residential portion. So the residential is the yellowish orange, or the lighter color, and then the darker orange is the commercial space. And if you could scroll down to the next graphic, it's a representation. It's not a formal application of what this would be, but this is our idea of how that would potentially manifest in this particular property.
Those pictures you got on the right-hand side, those are just ideas.
Yeah. So we're just seeking the rezone at this moment. We're trying to communicate what our vision potentially could be. We've included some photos to help demonstrate that vision.
So at this point, there's one exit out of there. Oh no, there's one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Onto the highway, or there's two on the highway and then one off the 300 South.
So why does the city of Providence need more mixed use and less commercial? That's what we're asking.
Okay. Well, there is the need for housing. That's one driver. And two, we wanted to present something that was more more representative of a mixed use for the town of Providence. There's definitely opportunity to do higher density, but given the type of town that Providence is, we dialed back the density, and we feel that as far as the mixed use is concerned, having them somewhat separate but overall integrated together is a better concept versus actually meshing them together in the same type of building.
Okay.
Those are the comments I have.
I want to make if I could. I know she mentioned Kathy Furman, but
Your name, please.
Craig Champlin.
Thank you.
I own the property now, including Kathy Furman's part of it. I don't think that this really represents what we'll do. I'll tell you what will represent what we do, and that is who wants to go over there and what they want to have there. What commercial companies want to go there. Now we've heard a lot by rumor, I guess, that Providence City would love to see a C-store on that corner, which I have no problem with it. But and we actually have been in contact with 3 different people that are interested in a C-store on that corner.
This is gonna show my ignorance. What's a C-store?
Convenience store,
Oh, okay.
gas station, and I guess I
I've
can
not heard
get
that
used.
term before.
Okay.
That's okay.
And then we want an A store.
None
An A store.
of the C's are
Well,
D's.
we'll build an A store, but it'll be a convenience store. But anyway, you also have a restaurant. I'm going to mispronounce the word. So somebody who does restaurants, a very well-established restaurant that has another store in a restaurant in town already. I don't know if I'm free to give the names. I'm not. So, and we've got what else we got, Ken?
Up to the mic.
Oh, okay. I forget.
So do I, obviously.
Don't go anywhere. Okay, say your name though. I remember saying your name.
Kent Dunkley. I'll meet after with Brian and let him know the restaurant's name.
I don't want to know.
I strike that. It is a restaurant. It is a good restaurant. They are in Logan now, and they would like to have a second store. And we did receive a letter of intent from them this week. They would like to be right on the corner, all of 3rd South and Highway 165. Also, there is a car wash that would like to be on this development.
This is
The best one. There's a paint store that would like to open a second store in Providence in that location. We've talked to them already. There's a dentist that would like to start not a new practice. He's in Utah County now. He just moved to Cache Valley, and he would like to build a building or buy a building from Mr. Champlin. And there is a C-store that there are a couple of auctions for C-stores that would like to come into that section. And so Craig sent me a drawing of, in talking to this restaurant, and he's broken up the first parcel, that's 7.6 acres, I think, right on the corner, the southeast corner of this property. And we'd love, I'm speaking for Craig and I shouldn't do that, but the way he's drawn this up on that first 7.6 acres is all of it would be commercial. And like Craig said, he'd love to take everything that would come. there are a couple things that I would like to say, and then I'll sit down and let you continue, Craig. I would like to say that Scarlett's description of this property, as she was reading that, and I understand it came from GIS, it didn't sound like the same property that I'm aware of over there with all the steep slopes and everything like that. Yeah, most of it's being farmed and has been. An important couple of points is the traffic, and someone mentioned the accesses onto Highway 165 and onto 300 South. Just as a note of interest, if all of us know the Fickus property, and I think you do, because we've talked about that before, but if you know Jerry's driveway off from 165, we're negotiating with UDOT right now to create an access, egress, ingress at that point where his driveway is. I've got to think that UDOT would do the same thing on the other side, on the east side of the highway, and that would become a new intersection right there. That would take care of a lot of the traffic, that 3rd South and then 500 South that's already on the books. So
It sounds great. All commercial. You mentioned all commercial.
now
You better address
my
something.
last
I was
point,
like, why do you want us to rezone this?
in my years of doing this, real estate, a lot of years, I can't remember a commercial entity calling me and saying, Mr. Dunkley, we'd like a commercial property, but we'd really like it back behind the other buildings where no one can see us and we don't have access or exposure. Access and exposure. And back behind other buildings, there isn't as much access and exposure. And I know Jason, and Jason's a good man, but there is some land left in Providence. But I agree with commercial. I think it's a good idea as long as there's access and exposure. But what do you do with the backyard? What do we do with inner blocks? There's got to be another use for those. And so mixed use.
Honestly, I would like nothing better than to put commercial all the way down that road. But it's behind that. What are you gonna do? You know, you've got the idea of getting a mid-sized box, or they hardly exist. It's too small for a big box. It's not big enough for a big box.
Tractor Supply is back there, isn't it? One block up, 2 blocks up.
Yeah, they are. And yeah, if somebody like that wants to come in, I'm open to it. But I think, in fact, if this whole thing turned into commercial, I wouldn't be disappointed. I just don't want to be left with some ground back there that I can't do anything with, because everybody wants to be on the street. They want to be on the street, or they want to have access from the street. I own other property on the north side of Logan, and between Jack's Tire and Oil and Neater's right in there, and I've owned it for years. Been trying to develop it for years, and I can't get a big box to come in there. I can't get a medium size, good location. I can't get a medium sized box to come in there. If a big box come in, they need to go on your property, Kathleen. You got the best piece. I wish they would. In fact, I talked to some representatives from Target, and I gave them your address. I says, you should go here. And they haven't gotten back to me, but I says, I'd love for you to go there. That makes my property more valuable. But I can't accommodate Walmart over there. It's not big enough. So anyway, that's all I really have to say. And I guess this is just starting the process. But if you've got, input, like to talk to us personally, that's fine. And I just want to get it developed. And if it's all commercial, who cares, If you get a mixed use designation zone change, you want to go all commercial, you're not going to be able to.
I know, that's why I'm almost thinking, I know what you did across the street. How did you zone that across the street west of where?
Multiple zones.
They have- Kathleen, maybe you want to address that. He's asking how we handled the annexation.
We had Roger Daly and Hans Peterson, and they wanted different zones. They didn't want the same. One wanted housing, and the other one wanted for it to just to be general, which is businesses. And so we came to a compromise where the front half of it stays in highway commercial, and the back half is what they wanted to zone. So there
So
is
what's
a way
the zone
for
they
us,
put in the back?
right? So we can give it 2 zones to make it more usable for you, because as Joe said, if you zone it mixed use, then you're tied to a certain percentage,
And I've kind
and they're
of,
not making it more commercial ground.
right, I've kind of realized that recently before we made this original application. I guess my whole goal is, yeah, I'd love to fill that up with commercial. I can make more money off of that, making it commercial. It's just if I don't fill it all up, then what am I gonna do with the rest of the ground? So I mean, you can always add more commercial to the, let's say we do have some medium density housing or something in the back, and then we get a box that comes in there and says, hey, I want more ground. I'm gonna be on board for that.
So Scarlett, he could come if we left it commercial. At some point, if he can't develop the back of it, he could come back and ask for a zone change for that little part. So there's flexibility in our code.
Right.
So like whatever we zone it today doesn't mean that it has to stay that way forever.
Well, we want to do something
So you got
nice.
some time to think about it, because it won't come up for the planning commission again for the public comment or the public hearing until at least 2 weeks from now.
Mhm.
And depending on what we have on.
One of the big problems we're going to have is with UDOT. And I don't know because if you, like, for example, if we were to put a convenience store on that corner, they want access. Now there's an existing access that's been there for a long time that goes into Little Ballard Springs. I don't know what my rights are to that access, but
I don't.
We'd love to have that as one of our access. Not to do it exactly the way it shows here, where we don't have, but we need an access closer than that to do a convenience store. So I just hope the city can get on board, so that you can help us do something that's good for the city. It can bring in tax revenue for you. I won't end up owning any of those businesses, but most likely. But
Well, that's good. We're all on the same page. We're all trying to do good things for the citizens of Providence.
Yeah.
And what makes the most sense. But like I said, you've got 2 weeks to think
yeah,
about that.
we'll give it some more thought, and I'll get
Actually,
with
not
my
quite that long.
architect. I think he's hearing this for the first time.
Flexibility is the word here.
I should have called you.
2 weeks.
Anyway,
2 weeks.
thank you for your time.
So there are options. There are things to think about in that 2-week period of time. And
Maybe we'll have some firm offers that it'll be subject to zoning that we can bring in and disclose to you.
So the most flexibility for you is to come in as commercial highway.
Well, yeah, to start out with.
Right. But you can always come in to change the back half of it.
Right. Yeah.
So that flexibility is there. Joe, you have a comment? I can see you over there.
No,
Oh.
the only comment I would have is I won't be able to say this because you'll leave the meeting, but your dad was Judge Champlin, as I understand.
Right, and his grandfather.
Good man.
And Craig and I went to school together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we miss him.
I hope
He's
you
been
have
dead
his
for-
history written down somewhere.
Yeah,
'Cause
he's been
I've
dead.
heard some good story. I know he has, but
He's been dead for 25 years. I can't believe it.
I've heard some good stories with him and about him with Judge Preston. So
Well, thank you. We intend to honor the family name and please do what we say we're gonna do. Anyway, thank you.
So Kathleen,
Yes.
to chat
Oh,
just for a minute about scheduling logistics.
Okay.
We need to put it up, well, if they don't want to change from commercial highway, then we're done.
Then we're done. We
You don't have to go
anything.
because that's
we'll
the
have to come
zone.
into the subdivision.
Yes, you would have to do that. But if you didn't want to change from commercial highway, we wouldn't have to notice the public hearing and all of that. They just move to their subdivision and site plans and whatnot. If they do want to change, it would be nice to know before we advertise it as mixed use, if really what they want to do is commercial highway and commercial general. Commercial highway along the front part, or maybe that corner, and then commercial general in the back part, because commercial highway, they're limited on anything that's office related, because commercial highway is designated for sales tax producing businesses. And while I'd love to see all of that come in, if they really do feel like they're gonna need dentists and a few things like that, that won't work with commercial highway much. A little bit will, but not much. So but it really is important if we're going to do it, we need to know what they want to do. And Ty, you'd need to post that Monday or Tuesday? Friday. So really, we need to know tomorrow.
If you're hearing this.
Or we can give time and have it and look and not press
Right.
and look for the 10th if they want to do it. And that doesn't slow them down if they want to do a design, because then they can come in with a design and could go to that route if they wanted and figure out what they can fit in there. And then and if they want to come back and rezone after they've showed some of what they can fit and build, and that way they're not slowing down their other ones. We don't want to slow down the commercial development.
Right, we all want that.
Sure. So, I mean, at that point, might as well get that piece designed and ready so you can get it going.
I'm understanding correctly, it's the timing is the 27th or the 10th. Is that the date and what time?
Yeah.
But if it's going in public hearing the 27th, we need.
Maybe we ought to go to the 27th so we have more time.
Or you mean the 10th?
The 10th.
Or the 10th.
It would be the 10th.
Oh, the 10th of November, yeah. That's
Or
what I meant.
October 20th. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do you want to leave it in commercial highway district and start subdividing it, taking some of these contracts?
Yeah, maybe we'll bring in a subdivision plan instead of.
So if we.
Yeah, and you could probably have that ready by the 10th.
Yeah, if let's set for the 10th, and then we'll have some internal discussions.
I'm to the mic. And don't forget to state your name.
This is Justin. I think the 10th works well. If we, as we do further analysis, we choose just to take it off the table, we can do that, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And you want maximum flexibility,
Yeah.
really.
Okay.
is-
So that, I think
Yeah.
that will give us
This one,
time
we're
to
just gonna leave
discuss
it.
that.
We're just gonna leave it highway commercial.
Okay.
So I don't want to create any false illusions or timeframes. If we're starting a subdivision process, that's great, but they may not, they've got to go through a concept plan first and then a preliminary plat, and they may not have time to do all of that and hit the
Before the
10th. Yeah, because you don't see the concept plan. You would see the preliminary plat. So I don't know, depending on how intricate their design is, I don't know whether they could make the 10th of November for a preliminary plat or not. We'll do our best, but no guarantees on that.
The way that I view that is that if we're keeping the date on the 10th, it's because we've decided we want to pursue a mixed use.
Okay.
That's it.
Right.
And if we decide that be commercial, we'll take it off. And then, yeah, obviously it won't be the 10th for discussion. I need much more time to figure that out before I can present it. So for us, it's just the 10th would just be for us pushing forward on mixed use rezone.
And so letting Scarlett know as soon
Yep.
as you
Sure, absolutely.
decide what direction you're gonna go.
Minimum of 10 days before that meeting.
Okay.
Well, that was a happy one.
Why didn't you put us first?
Weren't you entertained?
Sure, we could have changed the whole tone of the whole meeting.
Yeah, you could have, you could have.
My question, Craig, is when are you gonna build, get the senior homes built up? About,
Gotta talk to that guy right there.
We're waiting on
Really
mixed
close.
use.
I know.
I won't make any public comment about it.
And Craig, we need to talk about water
Yeah,
again, and so I'll just give you a call tomorrow.
all right.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you need a motion or public?
No, because this was only a study item.
Well, do we need a motion to move it, public comment for the 10th? And then it would be canceled if
No, we don't need a motion,
No, but
but you're gonna get back to Scarlett. Okay, thank you. Okay. The next study item is item number 5, land use code amendment application, and we don't have Mr. Beckett here again. Is he online anywhere? I'm just reluctant to do anything with it unless he's here to talk to us.
I think we let him reapply.
Okay.
At this point, we've given him enough time and spent enough time. I think it's because it's too cheap to apply. But if he hasn't spent his time,
So we'll turn it back. It's back in his ball court.
yeah,
We'll pass that.
I'd deny it and let him reapply if he
Because it's
wants
only a
to.
study item. There's no action that we need to take. Other than I'm reluctant to do anything with it unless he's here. Okay, so that ends our meeting. However, on the next agenda, if we could put the selection of a new chair.
Just do that right now.
Not on the agenda, we can.
Let's do a straw poll. Just let them know early.
I want to see these girls.
So, and our next meeting, do we have stuff for the next meeting, Scarlett, that you know of already? That we have to have a meeting?
We've got at least one preliminary plat that I think will be ready.
Okay.
I haven't gotten Rob's comments, but everybody else's, it looks pretty good.
Okay.
So as far as being ready to go, I don't know if it will look good to you guys, but as far as being
As long as
ready,
you've got all the stuff that you need and we get it to look at it, then. So we'll tentatively plan for another meeting on the 27th. But if we don't have to have a meeting, as always, we don't want to have a meeting, just to have a meeting. So let's keep an eye on that.
even though if you are no longer chairman or chair lady, you will stay here until the first of the year, right?
Yes, I'll stay on the council, or we can make the new chair effective when I, well, either immediately or when I go off. So we can decide when we make that effective. But I think it's only fair to that individual to have some additional training.
So go around and make vote and all these things.
Well, you almost fired me tonight because I made a couple of mistakes.
Oh, what's a little goof here and there?
Yeah. We're all human. Okay,
One
so
question.
Yes.
Did we ever line up anything about a training that we talked about?
Do you know, we keep
Anything?
putting it off,
Yeah, it's been
just because our
postponed.
agendas have been
Nothing's been
kind of packed.
discussed, so
But if we only have one item, maybe we can do it next time.
I think he needs more notice than that. He's
Does he?
down in Salt Lake.
Okay,
He needs at least a couple dates, 2 or 3 dates, and then he'll tell us what date he can arrive at.
Is this Jordan?
Cullimore, yeah.
He was here today.
oh, sorry.
He was in the office. We learned a lot.
Well, let's keep that in mind. That's something we need to take care of.
There are also online trainings that we can do. And so Ty is keeping track of that. So if you do some training and get some hours, then let Ty know. Joe is way ahead of us. He gets lots. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I still will do adjourn this meeting.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second by Brian Marble. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.